find yourself with only a few episodes left of your favorite show, but suddenly you don't want to watch anymore. You might be excited to win a crucial game battle, but you close the game. You might subconsciously swipe away from the page at the climax of a novel if you, or someone with ADHD attention deficit, hyperactivity disorder, knows this kind of sudden withdrawal from intense pleasure. This isn't just pretentiousness or procrastination, but rather a unique coping mechanism in the ADHD brain's neuroregulation and emotional perception. From a neuroscientific perspective, it can be broken down into three core causes. The dopamine system in the ADHD brain is like a sensitive and finely regulated engine. Low baseline dopamine levels lead to a more intense response to pleasurable stimuli, while also having a weak ability to regulate, making it prone to sudden spikes and dips. This trait leads people with ADHD to instinctively choose to actively interrupt when faced with extremely pleasurable experiences. When immersed in a favorite drama, game or novel, the brain releases a surge of dopamine, bringing intense excitement and satisfaction. This is the pleasure peak. However, the ADHD brain keenly predicts that this peak is short-lived. Once the experience ends, e.g. finishing a drama or completing a game, dopamine levels drop rapidly, followed by a profound sense of loss and emptiness, or even a dopamine crash, like a sudden drop from the top of a roller coaster. This drop is an unbearable shock to the sensitive nervous system, actively leaving behind unfinished endings or uncompleted levels is essentially a smart decision made by the ADHD brain. It transforms a one-time, intense dopamine release into a sustained, gentle background anticipation. As long as the state of unfinished exists, that wonderful world remains to be unlocked. This suspense itself continuously releases trace amounts of dopamine, maintaining a gentle sense of pleasure and avoiding the emotional shock of plunging from peak to trough. Simply put, rather than passively enduring the emptiness after watching a show, it's better to actively choose the anticipation of more shows to watch. This is the gentle downhill slope deliberately created by the brain to protect itself. Everyone's brain has an optimal range of arousal. Similar to the Yerkes-Dodson law, too low arousal leads to boredom and distraction, while too high leads to anxiety, overexcitement, and even loss of control. This range is often narrower in the ADHD brain, resulting in a more intense arousal response to pleasurable stimuli, easily approaching the upper limit. At this point, active disengagement becomes a pressure relief valve to prevent overheating. Experiences like reaching a climax on a TV series or winning a crucial game battle can cause a rapid surge in arousal levels in the brain of someone with ADHD. Flying thoughts, heightened emotions, and even mild physical tension such as sweaty palms and a rapid heartbeat. While pleasurable, this state also consumes a lot of energy and subconsciously triggers alarms that control is about to spin out of control. If this continues, excessive excitement can lead to a loss of focus and even mood swings, such as sudden irritation. This mechanism is similar to a cat biting its owner when it's being petted too comfortably. It's not because it dislikes the pet, but rather because the excessive pleasurable stimulation has overloaded its nervous system, requiring an interruption, biting the hand to release tension and bring arousal levels back down to a comfort zone. Active withdrawal in people with ADHD is the human version of a cat biting their hand. Through voluntary actions like turning off a TV show or quitting a game, they forcibly cut off the flow of high arousal stimulation, bringing the nervous system back from the brink of spin out of control to a comfort zone, avoiding a short circuit caused by excessive pleasure. People with ADHD often exhibit emotional intolerance, experiencing intense emotions, both positive and negative, more deeply and having a weaker ability to regulate them. For them, extreme happiness, like extreme sadness, is a high-energy emotional vortex that easily leads to immersion and difficulty with endurance. Distancing themselves from the experience in these situations is a form of protective self-care. What ordinary people find happy can be magnified many times over for people with ADHD, much like staring directly at the midday sun. While warm, it can cause discomfort to the emotional senses. For example, while watching a touching drama might move an average person, someone with ADHD might cry uncontrollably, even suffering from emotional distress for days afterwards. Winning a game might elevate an average person for a while, but someone with ADHD might be so excited they can't sleep. Actively pausing and leaving something unfinished is like putting a pair of emotional sunglasses on intense happiness. It doesn't completely forgo the pleasure. You can still savor the previous plot and gameplay experience, but it also avoids being burned by excessive happiness. By reducing the continuous input of extreme emotions, it allows the emotional system time to digest and avoid being overwhelmed by the intensity. This kind of detachment isn't a sign of dislike, but rather a sign of too much enjoyment. It's precisely because the experience is so profound that a pause is necessary to protect one's emotional perception. Finally, detachment isn't a flaw, but rather the unique wisdom of the ADHD brain. For people with ADHD, abruptly detaching from pleasure isn't a sign of procrastination or a personality issue, but rather a dynamic balance cultivated by the brain through long-term adaptation. It anticipates dopamine fluctuations to avoid emotional setbacks. It regulates arousal levels to prevent excessive loss of control, and it protects emotional perception to avoid being overwhelmed by intense emotion. Understanding this mechanism can not only help people with ADHD accept their own idiosyncratic behavior, no longer blaming themselves for not finishing a show, but also help those around them understand that this pause isn't about rejecting happiness, but rather about enjoying it more intelligently. After all, true joy isn't a one-time extreme burst of pleasure, but rather a gentle, lasting warmth within.